Back in 2018, the bid for the North American World Cup was built on a promise of accessibility. The official word to fans, seats starting at just $21. But when the official ticket windows finally opened to the public, the entire world immediately had a massive digital wall. The cheapest entry point for many had skyrocketed to $4,185. While families spent years saving for a seat in the stands, a ruthless corporate strategy was already moving the goalposts. This is Priced Out, World Cup Edition, a deep dive investigation into the corporate greed threatening the world's most popular sport. Welcome to Episode 1, The Origin Story. We're going inside the rooms where the $21 promise died, identifying the exact moment the switch was flipped on the fans. The weaponization of dynamic pricing turned a standard ticket queue into an algorithmic surge. Lille supporters logged in for a fair chance, only to realize the seats they were promised had been locked behind elite front row tiers. Investigative reporting from The Athletic has exposed the scale of the plan to extract millions from the global base fan. For the millions who call this game a religion, the realization was immediate. Their savings were no longer enough to get through the door. This wasn't a market accident, it was a calculated maneuver that has sparked a massive international retaliation. In Washington, lawmakers are officially demanding answers for what they've labeled price gouging. In Brussels, the European Commission is reviewing formal complaints of lawbreaking and consumer betrayal. As the primary market becomes a fortress, federal regulators are warning of a secondary wave of scams preying on the desperate. The global fan community is no longer just disappointed, they're organized. Yet, in the face of multi-government investigations, the leadership at the top remains defiant, defending the very strategies that locked the world out. Our series follows the trail to the specific desks where these algorithms were approved, naming the architects of the $4,000 seat. While the investigations play out in the courts, we are charting a roadmap for the fans left in the wreckage, revealing the back channels and broadcast alternatives to reclaim the tournament without going bankrupt. The investigation begins now. Listen to Episode 1, because no fan should be forced to choose between the team they love and the rent they owe.
Priced Out Studios presents our Priced Out World Cup season of 18 AI-assisted investigative episodes leading up to opening day of the 2026 World Cup.
Welcome to Priced Out World Cup Edition, a true crime podcast documenting how corporate greed is leaving fans watching on their couch. But we always spotlight how fans can still get a deal.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, and welcome to all of you listening. Today, we are custom tailoring this deep dive into a massive stack of sources for you. We're talking investigative pieces from The Athletic and Euronews, government press releases, and even fan subreddits.
There is a lot of material to cover.
There really is, because our mission today is to unpack the origin story of the 2026 World Cup ticket crisis. And we're looking at just this absurd contrast.
Oh, it was completely night and day.
Right. I mean, if you look at FIFA's 2018 bid, they promised affordable tickets. We were expecting like $21 group stage tickets. That was the promise.
Yeah, the game for the people, right?
Exactly. But today, as Euronews reports, fans are staring at a $4,185 price tag for the absolute cheapest seat at the final.
It's pretty staggering when you put those two numbers side by side.
It's insane. Okay, let's unpack this. How exactly did a sport universally known as the game for the people transform into this exclusive luxury asset almost overnight?
Well, what's fascinating here is the actual mechanics of it. Because this wasn't, some sudden loud press conference where executives stood up and announced a massive price hike.
Right. They wouldn't do that.
No, it was a very quiet, highly methodical shifting of the goalposts. So if you dig into the investigative pieces from Goal.com and Euronews, they detail how FIFA silently introduced this new category. They call them front row tiers.
Front row tiers, just slipped it right in there.
Exactly. And these are the tickets hitting that $4,105 mark.
Mm-hmm.
They just baked these exorbitant tiers into the official pricing architecture without any real fanfare.
Wow.
And by doing this, they effectively shattered those early promises of a $21 entry point, but they never had to actually officially retract their initial statements.
That is so wild to me. It's like reading through these sources, The justification for these tiers immediately reminds me of the airline industry.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, think about how airlines operate, right? Over the years, they've slowly shrunk your legroom, they took away your complimentary bags.
Right, charge you for everything.
Exactly. And then they take a standard middle seat, give it maybe an extra inch of knee space, and rebrand it as, economy premium.
Yep.
It's the exact same product you used to get standard, but now it's exponentially more expensive. And according to the fans subreddits we've been monitoring, that's exactly how people feel about these front row tiers. It's just a football match. The pitch hasn't changed.
The rules are the same.
Right. They've just taken the standard experience of sitting near the field and artificially inflated the cost. It's wild.
It is, but, while the airline analogy works perfectly for the seating arrangement and the illusion of premium tiering, there is one crucial difference here. Supply. I mean, with airlines, if one carrier raises the price, you just open a new tab and book a different airline, right?
Yeah, I guess you have alternatives.
Right, but FIFA holds an absolute, unshakable global monopoly on this product. You cannot go to a competitor to watch the World Cup final.
That is very true.
And you can actually see the corporate defense of this monopoly playing out in real time. Yeah. There was this highly publicized CNBC broadcast recently where FIFA president Gianni Infantino went on air.
Oh, I think I saw clips of that.
Yeah, and he was defending this exact pricing model, and his defense essentially revolves around supply and demand. He's treating this deeply ingrained global cultural event as if it were like a limited edition sneaker drop.
Which just feels so disconnected from the working class fan base.
Completely. Now, I should mention, ESPN did report that after a massive wave of initial backlash, FIFA made a slight pivot. They slashed some prices and created what they called a supporter tier.
Okay, so a tiny concession.
Yeah, but as Sports Illustrated meticulously documented in their follow-up analysis, it's largely window dressing. The overarching pricing structure remains entirely unprecedented. Offering a tiny fraction of discounted seats doesn't really change the structural reality.
The median entry point is still way out of reach.
Exactly.
Well, you can't quintuple prices without making enemies. And that backlash didn't just stay a localized complaint. When you lock the core audience out of the stadium, that frustration has to go somewhere.
It definitely boiled over.
Yeah, looking at the community reactions we sourced from Yahoo Sports and the really active r/soccer and r/football subreddits, the overarching sentiment is just that fans feel their intelligence is being insulted.
Yeah, they're not buying the excuses.
Not at all. In fact, an AP News report quoted fans on the ground openly calling this a monumental betrayal. And that word betrayal really seems to be the driving force here.
Because fans don't just invest their emotions, right?
Right. They invest their local tax dollars. They invest generational loyalty into this sport.
That's spot on. And that sense of betrayal is exactly what escalated this from a simple PR headache into formal legal and political jeopardy.
Wait, like actual legal trouble?
Oh, absolutely. We are no longer just looking at angry posts on message boards. This backlash has serious institutional weight behind it now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. According to reports from The Mirror, BBC Sport, and an official policy breakdown on LinkedIn by football supporters, Europe, or FSE, this issue has actually reached the European Commission.
The European Commission? Seriously?
Seriously. FSE, alongside the major consumer rights group, Euroconsumers, they filed a formal legal complaint accusing FIFA of actively breaching EU law.
Okay, but what specific laws are they actually accusing them of breaking? Because, corporate greed isn't technically a crime, right?
Right. No, it comes down to the European Union's Unfair Commercial Practices Directive. The core of the complaint is really about transparency and bait-and-switch tactics. Euroconsumers is basically arguing that a corporation cannot publicly advertise a product at an accessible price point to gain market entry and political favor, like, winning the bid, only to completely restructure the availability of that price point once everyone is locked in.
That makes a lot of sense. So they're saying it violates fundamental consumer protection standards.
Exactly. And this legal friction isn't just isolated to Europe. If we look at the U.S. government right now, lawmakers are stepping into the arena too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, so as reported by The Athletic, the Sports Business Journal, and official press releases, you've got representatives like Josh Harder and Representative Escobar writing formal letters to FIFA.
Just to impartially report on what they're saying, they're demanding a halt to price gouging, right?
Yes, explicitly demanding a halt to price gouging and pressing the organization to dramatically lower costs for their constituents.
Okay, I have to push back on this a bit, because whenever I see politicians writing these strongly worded letters to a massive international organization like FIFA, I get a little skeptical.
Yep.
Do these congressional letters actually do anything to lower ticket prices for you and me? Or is this just like classic political posturing? You know, an elected official points at the bad guy, tells their voters, look, I'm fighting for you.
Well, FIFA just ignores it.
Right. While the governing bodies in Switzerland essentially file the letter in the trash and do whatever they want anyway, what's the actual mechanism that makes FIFA care about a letter from a U.S. representative?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you're totally right to be skeptical of a single letter operating in a vacuum. A letter on its own doesn't force a price drop.
Right.
But what we are witnessing here is coordinated, simultaneous international pressure. You have the European Union's regulatory bodies and U.S. lawmakers moving at the same time.
Yeah.
And that presents a very real mechanical threat to FIFA's operations.
How so?
Think about how a World Cup actually functions logistically. FIFA relies heavily on host nations for things like tax exemptions, expedited visa processing for their staff.
Oh, security infrastructure.
Exactly. Massive security deployments and broadcasting rights facilitation. If the European Commission formally classifies their pricing as a breach of consumer law, or if the U.S. Congress starts viewing them as a hostile monopoly exploiting taxpayers, that red carpet gets rolled up.
Oh, I see. Visas get delayed.
Right. Visas get delayed, tax exemptions get audited, broadcasting regulations get tightened. The politicians might just be scoring points, sure, but the sheer volume of these complaints threatens the regulatory freedom FIFA needs to operate.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a warning shot about the logistics.
Exactly.
But, you know, while the politicians and lawyers debate EU directives, desperate fans are the ones left scrambling, because the official front door to the stadium is locked behind a $4,000 paywall.
Which naturally forces them into the secondary market.
Right. They're looking for a back window. And according to the r/football community on Reddit, resale prices have reached extreme, almost comical highs. We are talking about listings demanding tens of thousands of dollars for standard seats.
And that secondary market is where the consumer protection crisis truly peaks. Because the official market is impenetrable, we are seeing a terrifying influx of sophisticated scam operations.
Yeah, the dark side of this true crime story.
Exactly. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually had to issue a highly specific consumer alert just regarding World Cup ticket scams.
Wow.
Yeah, and cybersecurity firms like Panda Security and advocacy groups like Stamp Out Scams, they've published extensive data showing how these frauds operate. The human cost is just devastating.
It really is. I saw this piece of YouTube broadcast journalism recently, and it documented this right on the ground.
Oh, the one at the stadium gates.
Yes, it showed fans draped in their national colors standing at the gates, scanning their digital tickets on their phones, only to find out right at the turnstile that the tickets they drained their savings for were never real.
Heart-wrenching.
It was awful. They had purchased them on third-party sites that looked perfectly legitimate, transferred the funds, and were left entirely empty-handed.
A nightmare.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Navigating the secondary ticket market today isn't just risky. It's like playing three-card Monte on the sidewalk.
That is a great analogy.
Right. You see the card, you think you know where the ticket is, and you put your money down. But the game is structurally rigged before you even make a move, because the person selling you the ticket often doesn't even own it to begin with.
Yep.
You have no idea if you're actually getting a seat or if you're just handing your credit card information to a server farm halfway across the world.
And the reason that rigged game exists at such a massive scale is structural. A comprehensive report from the Progressive Policy Institute highlights that state regulations on resale markets are severely lagging behind the technology scammers use.
What kind of technology?
Well, for example, scammers are heavily utilizing a tactic called dynamic spoofing.
Wait, let's pause there. What exactly is dynamic spoofing for the listener who might not be a cybersecurity expert?
Sure. Essentially, dynamic spoofing means these scam organizations write automated code that constantly changes their fake website's IP address, the URL, and even the visual appearance every few minutes.
So it's a moving target.
Exactly. By the time a consumer protection agency flags a fake ticketing site and gets it taken down, the site has already vanished and reappeared under a completely new name.
That's terrifying.
And when you combine that with crypto-based payment gateways that make tracing the stolen funds nearly impossible, you have a perfect storm. Meanwhile, local legislation is still written to police, physical ticket scalpers standing on street corners.
Right. Guys in trench coats outside the venue.
Yeah. But the legal framework simply hasn't caught up to the digital reality of global ticket fraud.
That is an incredibly frustrating reality to face. But, as we promised at the top of the deep dive, we aren't just here to analyze corporate greed and scams.
Right, we promised a silver lining.
We did. We want to give you, the listener, practical, actionable ways to still experience the joy of the World Cup without getting exploited. Because the game still belongs to the public.
Absolutely.
So how do we actually navigate this? Well, first, if you are absolutely dead set on getting a ticket, there are specialized digital tools out there right now, like TrackLacker.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it provides a complete, real-time ticket price guide to help fans track actual deals. It uses API scraping to monitor verifiable listings, alerting you the second prices drop. And there's also Jetpack Global, which put out a comprehensive guide on how to safely compare face value versus resale pricing.
Those tracking tools are absolutely crucial if you're brave enough to wade into that market.
Yeah.
But we also have to look at alternatives for the fans who are completely priced out of the stadiums entirely.
Which is a lot of people.
Most people, really. And thankfully, there are legal, viable ways to circumvent the massive domestic broadcasting costs, too. According to TechRadar and Yahoo Sports, fans can utilize secure VPNs, virtual private networks, to access global broadcast options.
Let's break down how that actually works legally. Because I know a lot of people hear VPN and they immediately assume it's piracy.
Right. And it's not piracy at all. It's more like a digital passport.
Yeah.
Many countries, particularly in Europe, have legal mandates that the World Cup must be broadcast for free on their public television networks.
Like the BBC or ITV in the UK?
Exactly. So by using a free or cheap VPN, you route your internet connection through a server in that specific country. Your computer essentially looks like it's browsing from London.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and this allows you to legally access those free public streams in high definition, completely avoiding the need to sign up for an expensive cable package.
That is a massive practical workaround for anyone watching from the couch. But, you know, what if you still crave that physical energy?
Crowd noise.
Yeah, the roar of the crowd, the shared agony of a missed penalty, spilled drinks. This is where the local community is really stepping in. I was looking at resources from iloveny.com and Pennsylvania Public Media, and they're documenting this huge rise in official free community viewing events and fan zones.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah, local governments and organizers are stepping up. They're setting up massive high-definition screens in public parks, shutting down city blocks.
Just creating their own stadiums, basically.
Exactly. But I have to ask you, and really I'm asking the listener directly to think about this, is standing in a crowded public park a fair trade-off for being priced out of the physical stadium?
It's a tough question.
Especially a stadium that your tax dollars likely helped renovate. Or does a crowded public park actually recapture the pure communal spirit of soccer that FIFA's VIP tiers are currently destroying?
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Because when I think about my own best memories of watching sports, it's not sitting politely in a padded seat next to a corporate executive. It's standing shoulder to shoulder with thousands of people who live and breathe the sport. So what does this all mean?
Yeah, where does this leave us?
It seems to me that while the physical stadium architecture might be strictly reserved for the global elites this year, the actual culture of the game is moving to the streets and digital watch parties.
That is a powerful reframing of the situation. It shifts the cultural ownership back to the community where it originated. But we cannot let the governing bodies off the hook just because the fans are resilient.
Absolutely not.
This raises an important question. If a global sporting event funded heavily by taxpayer dollars for stadium infrastructure becomes too expensive for those same taxpayers to attend, who does the World Cup actually belong to anymore?
Stay tuned for Episode 2, Dynamic Pricing, the algorithm that ate soccer, releasing on Friday, April 18th. It's a clear, jargon-free explanation of how dynamic pricing works, how FIFA deployed it for the first time in World Cup history, and why fan groups say it has no place in football. All based on sources including The Athletic, NPR, Sports Illustrated, and YouTube broadcast journalism.